Today's episode of Off the Timeline is titled The Transfer That Changed the 2011 National Championship. In 2011, one transfer changed college football. He didn't win the national championship, but he changed who played for it. That quarterback was Russell Wilson. In real life, he transferred to Wisconsin, turned their offense into a machine, and helped Wisconsin have a very strong season. But imagine something different. Imagine Russell Wilson choosing Clemson instead. Because if that happens, the 2011 season might end with a completely different national championship matchup. Instead of LSU versus Alabama, it could have been LSU versus Clemson. And that single transfer might have changed the future of Wisconsin, Clemson, and even Duke. Now let's set the table for the real 2011 season. To understand why this alternate history matters, we have to go back to the beginning of the 2011 season. Russell Wilson had just finished his career at NC State. He was experienced, accurate, and extremely efficient. But because of a dispute with coaching staff about playing baseball, Wilson decided to transfer for his final year of eligibility. In real life, he chose Wisconsin, and the results were immediate. Wisconsin won the Big Ten championship and played in the Rose Bowl. But Clemson's 2011 story looks very different. The Tigers had talent, they had speed, and a rising head coach in Dabo Swinney. But the offense was still inconsistent, and Clemson was still trying to figure out how to become a national contender. That's where this alternate timeline begins, because in this universe, Russell Wilson chooses Clemson, and that sets the table for the butterfly decision. In this timeline, Clemson offensive coordinator Chad Morris aggressively recruits Wilson. The pitch is simple. Come run the fastest offense in the ACC, put up huge numbers, and compete for a national championship. Wilson accepts. Suddenly, Clemson has something it didn't have in 2011, an experienced quarterback who had already started several college games. And that changes everything about the Tigers' offense. The system that Morris designed becomes far more efficient. The passing game opens up, and tempo increases. Clemson suddenly looks like one of the most dangerous offenses in the country. But the ripple effect starts somewhere else, back in the Big Ten, because without Wilson, Wisconsin looks completely different. And that sets the table to Wisconsin without Wilson. Without Russell Wilson, Wisconsin offense loses its biggest advantage. The offensive line is elite, the running backs are still strong, but defenses no longer fear the passing. Opponents stack the box. The offense becomes predictable. And instead of one-sided wins, Wisconsin starts playing tight games. And eventually those close games turn into losses. The Badgers still remain competitive, but they fall out of the Big Ten title race. And that opens the door for another team, Michigan State. Michigan State seizes control of the conference. Wisconsin's season quietly fades. But on the ACC, something very different is happening. Clemson keeps winning. Now pause for a moment, because this is where the alternate history starts to build up. Russell Wilson has Clemson undefeated. Wisconsin has already slipped in the Big Ten race. And the biggest rivalry game of Clemson's season is about to happen. If Clemson wins that game, they could end up in the national championship conversation. And that sets the table for the legendary game. Late into the 2011 season, Clemson faces its biggest rival, South Carolina. In real life, Clemson lost this game badly, but in this universe, they have Russell Wilson. The game becomes a defensive battle. South Carolina controls the line of scrimmage early. Clemson struggles to establish the run, but Wilson keeps the Tigers in the game. Short passes, smart decisions, third down conversions. Late in the fourth, Clemson trails by 3. Wilson leads the final drive. The pocket collapses. He escapes pressure, rolls to his right, finds a receiver in the middle of the field. Touchdown! Clemson wins. And with that single moment, the entire national championship race changes. And that sets the table for the BCS chaos, because Clemson now finishes the season undefeated. An undefeated ACC champion with one of the best quarterbacks in the country. The BCS standings suddenly become even more controversial. Instead of an LSU Alabama rematch dominating the conversation, the debate becomes even stronger on whether Alabama should get a rematch, or should Clemson play for the national championship. In this alternate universe, Clemson jumps into the number 2 spot, and the national championship matchup becomes LSU versus Clemson. Russell Wilson against the most dominant defense in college football. And that sets the table for the national championship. LSU's defense in 2011 was legendary. Future NFL players everywhere, the most dominant unit in the sport. But Clemson with Russell Wilson becomes a far more worthy opponent than expected. Instead of the defensive struggle we saw in the real title game, this matchup becomes more competitive. Wilson keeps Clemson in the game. Short throws, scrambles, clutch third down conversions. Late in the third quarter, Clemson trails by 10. Wilson engineers another long drive. Touchdown! Suddenly, it's a one-possession game. But LSU's defense eventually closes the door. LSU ends up winning the national championship. But the story of the season becomes completely different. Instead of a controversial rematch, college football remembers 2011 as the year Clemson nearly shocked the sport. And that sets the table for long-term ripple effects. And they continue after that game. Clemson reaching the national championship accelerates their rise. Recruiting improves, momentum builds. The dynasty that would later define the 2010s starts earlier in the decade. And the ACC benefits from that national exposure. Programs like Duke, for example, suddenly operate in a stronger conference and see stronger results, all because one quarterback chose a different school. And that's the magic of college football history. Sometimes the biggest changes don't come from championships. Sometimes they come from a single decision. If Russell Wilson had transferred to Clemson instead of Wisconsin, the 2011 national championship race might have looked very different. But now I want to hear from you. Would Clemson actually beat LSU in this universe? Or would that LSU defense still dominate? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoy exploring alternate college football universes like this one, make sure to like, subscribe, and check out the next video on your screen. And I'll see you in the next timeline.